In this video, I'm going to give you the secrets of how to climb Mount Whitney Trail to the highest peak in the continental United States, even if you miss the Whitney lottery and all the permits are gone. So for procrastinators in the summer that want to climb Mount Whitney, I'm going to tell you about 3 that are section hikes that are relatively easy to get a permit for during the summer when it's easiest to climb Mount Whitney without any snow, for instance, that you can get on Recreation.gov. They involve multi-day backpacking trips, and you'll have to camp at least a day, but probably 2 to 3 days prior to your summit day. And then you have the option of either exiting through Whitney Portal, in which case you either have to get a taxi, which probably will cost in the neighborhood of $200 to transfer to your previous place if you didn't stash a car. Or if you have a multi-person party, then you can stash a car at Whitney Portal and then stash one at the trailhead that you started to. These section hikes are about 40 miles one way at a minimum, but if you do a round trip, they'll be almost double that. Not entirely double that, because exiting Whitney Portal is a pretty good hike in itself, of about 8.1 miles versus the about 30 miles for the kind of minimum one of these hikes going back. Okay, so for the non-Whitney permits, you go to Recreation.gov, and I think the keyword Inyo Wilderness will work. If you try to find these permits on their own, you can't find them. But if you go to Inyo, I-N-Y-O, which is the forest, the national forest in which Mount Whitney lies, then you can select among those wilderness permits JMT, Kearsarge Pass, Cottonwood Pass, or Cottonwood Lakes. And supposedly 40% of these permits are held for within 2 weeks of their needing. So there should be some last minute permits of these available within 2 weeks of when you're booking them. 7 a.m. Pacific time, 2 weeks in advance, so 14 days in advance. So you need to be on Recreation.gov at 7 a.m. Pacific time for the Inyo Wilderness permits. And there's a bunch of permits that are going to come up for Kearsarge Pass, Cottonwood Lakes, and Cottonwood Pass. And that's going to allow you to hike to Whitney and climb Mount Whitney with only a 3 to 4 day, maybe 5 day backpacking trip. There are lots of other overnight exiting Whitney. You see there's dozens, scores of them, but those 3 are probably the closest and the shortest that exit Whitney. So I'm looking here at the Recreation.gov, and I see that the JMT Kearsarge Pass is full, and the Cottonwood Lakes is full, but the Cottonwood Pass has availability on July 23rd, July 24th, and July 25th, and they're going to go up and be available. The W says the walk-ups are going to be available at 7 a.m. 14 days in advance. All right, so the way that most people will hike Whitney is to enter the lottery, and the lottery opens February 1st through March 15th in 2021. And then the lottery results are published on March 24th, and then April 1st, reservations are open for the remaining dates, and April 30th, deadline to confirm awarded lottery registration. May 1st, unclaimed lottery released for the web. And so basically, if you're after May 1st, you are out of luck, because those permits are definitely gone. They were probably gone a month ago, but they're definitely gone by May 1st. And so it's not until November that you don't need a permit via the lottery. And there's 100 permits for day hikes and 60 permits for overnight hikes. Now, I've never tried the lottery, but if you are in, if you're in February and before the March deadline to enter the lottery, and if you're in a multi-person group, my advice would be to have each member of your group enter the lottery. So everybody paid their $6 to enter the lottery. So if there's a 1 in 3 chance of winning the lottery, which is consistent with recent lotteries, then if each one member of your group enters the lottery for a 3-person group, then your chance goes up from 1 in 3 to a 70% chance of success. So instead of having to wait 3 years in expectation to climb Whitney via the lottery route, you could most likely not have to wait any time if your group is large enough and everybody is entering the lottery. Now, the ones that, if 2 people win the lottery, well, you don't have to accept that. You only have one of your group members accept that. And to get that extra chance, that extra 1 in 3 chance, you just pay your $6. Now, I'm going to argue that day hikes are really only for the fittest of the trail runners, that they're very difficult to execute a day hike well. So if you're one of the 100 lucky people to get the day hike, I would highly, highly, highly recommend, unless you consider yourself a 3-hour marathon runner, that you start hiking at 11 p.m. the night before, or at the latest 12, because it's 22 miles plus 6,000 feet of elevation. You should give yourself an hour for each 1,000 feet of elevation. And, most people are probably going to hike around 30 minutes per mile, right? With the breaks and everything. So don't assume that if you do a 7-minute mile, you're going to be able to do that no problem, or if you've run 3 marathons, you're going to be able to do that. Only 1/3 of those 160 permit holders per day during the summertime, which is defined as May through November 1st, they only 1/3 of those succeed in climbing Whitney. Unless you're the fittest of the bunch, that would mean you're in the top third of lottery winners, then you're going to probably fail unless you use every edge you can, and hiking at midnight, even before midnight, because the key thing is the Whitney zone doesn't happen until 3 miles from Whitney Portal, and so you're not allowed to enter the Whitney zone until midnight. So you got the 24 hours. The more reasonable way is to carry a camping pack, so you carry a heavy pack with camping gear, and to camp at outpost or preferably trail camp. And that way you cut off at trail camp, you cut off 6.1 miles each way, so 12 miles. And so you could do a 10-mile day in Summit Whitney on Summit Day. And if you do outpost camp, you cut out about 8 miles, so you could do about a 14-mile day to Summit Whitney. And, my reading of those lottery permits, the overnight lottery permits, which are going to be gone by May 1st, but probably early in March, and if if you miss the lottery deadline, you're probably not going to get one of those. You could conceivably camp for multiple days if you wanted to, at perhaps like outpost camp and trail camp. So let's say you're not a planner. You really want to do Whitney this year. You can't wait till next year. Maybe you're like me. You don't live in California. What can you do? So you get these section hikes, which they are Onion Valley, that will show up on Recreation.gov as the JMT Kearsarge Pass, Cottonwood Pass, or Cottonwood Lakes exiting Whitney Portal, right? And so though you pay a little extra to exit Whitney Portal, and those hikes, the JMT Kearsarge Pass, which is the Onion Valley trailhead, is about 44 miles one way. Cottonwood Pass is about 40 miles one way. Cottonwood Lakes is also about 40 miles one way, and Cottonwood Pass and Cottonwood Lakes are at the Horseshoe Meadows trailhead, but the Cottonwood Pass and Cottonwood Lakes are not the same place, and if you go to those places, they'll say on the signs at the trailhead, if you have a Cottonwood Pass, you have to go through Cottonwood Pass. If you Cottonwood Lakes, you go through Cottonwood Lakes. The good thing about the Cottonwood Lakes is if you're doing a lot of 14ers, you're going to go right by Mount Langley. And so if you give yourself an extra day and some extra time, of course, that's going to add to your miles. It'll probably put you over 50 miles. You could climb Mount Langley on the way to climbing Mount Whitney. But I know you're saying to me, hey, I can barely do 22 miles. How am I going to do 40 miles? But I think actually that just the opposite is true, that with these section hikes of multi-days, I think unless you get injured, unless you run out of food or something like that you're probably going to get stronger, not weaker, because you're going to get acclimated to the height in the way that somebody that does a day hike to Whitney Portal and drives up from LA the day before is not going to be acclimated to the elevation. And I think you just get used to doing it. And by the time you get to the switchbacks to ascend Whitney from Guitar Lake, then you're going to be much stronger. So the staging point for all these hikes, so the Onion Valley, Cottonwood Pass, and Cottonwood Lakes, you're probably going to want to stage at Guitar Lake, and I think that's about 11,500 feet, and it's very similar in terms of, you ascend that versus the 99 switchbacks ascending from trail camp if you were one of the lucky 60 people that day to win the lottery. But you don't have to win the lottery here. These passes are probably cost you about $31. I think there's a $6 online fee, and then it's $25. Exiting Whitney Portal passes, I think, cost $20 more at the time of recording this. It's obviously not a significant amount. Another thing is, I'm not sure that they have wag bags. I'm pretty sure they don't have wag bags at the Onion Valley or Horseshoe Meadows trailhead. Horseshoe Meadows is for the Cottonwood passes. So you probably would be behooved, if you plan to exit Whitney Portal, to get a wag bag. Otherwise, you'd run afoul of the regulations. And the wag bags are to poop. You're supposed to poop in the wag bags. Don't pee in them, poop in them. Carry the poop out. If you are camping at Guitar Lake through Whitney Portal, right? So the area, the Mount Whitney zone plus the Guitar Lake zone doesn't really have dirt, so you can't dig holes in the dirt and bury your poop. It's illegal to leave your poop in those areas, and you'll get fined, and you'll just be an awful person, because nobody wants to hike a poopy Mount Whitney. So the good thing, though, is if you're doing these through hikes, if you're not in the Guitar Lake zone, you're not in the Whitney zone or the Whitney Portal area, then you can dig rabbit holes that are 6 to 8 inches deep, and as long as they're 200 feet from the water, then you're good to go, and you don't have to carry out your poop, but you do have to carry out your toilet paper. So take a nice Ziploc bag with you for those toilet paper. I like the Glad slider bags. Those are airtight bags. You take several of those. That'll come in handy, I guarantee you. All these hikes, including, there's another very common one, which is about twice as long as the High Sierra Trail that starts in Sequoia National Park and you can exit in Whitney Portal, which is about 80 miles, just under 80 miles one way. All these are referred to as going through the John Muir Trail, right? Which the John Muir Trail is a very long through hike that you could do, but you just need to do the sections, which is JMT Kearsarge Pass if you want to do Onion Valley to the north, or you do Cottonwood Pass or Cottonwood Lakes to the south and at the Horseshoe Meadow trailhead. There's a number of things I want to point out about doing these basically hiking to Mount Whitney from the west, right? So Whitney Portal, you come from east to west. For all these other hikes that are longer, you're coming to Mount Whitney from the west, right? So you're hiking from west to east. So they intersect the Mount Whitney Trail at Trail Junction, not to be confused with Trail Crest, which is a half mile closer to trail camp in the Whitney zone. But Trail Junction, and on the day that I hiked it, I saw over a dozen, maybe 2 dozen bags, and the bags were constantly being moved, right? Because people are coming in and coming out. And I really found that Guitar Lake was pretty crowded. I think these John Muir options are very popular, and in August, it didn't seem like it was hard to get the permits, but in July, at least early July, late June, those permits were a lot more available on a last minute basis. Now, if you go, if you go in early June, there's probably going to be some snow. This year, Whitney was closed down because of a forest fire, and there was the heat dome, and so I think there was less snow this year than other years. July, there's a good chance if you're late in July, there'll be no snow. Early July, you might have some snow on the trail, and that make it more technically difficult. You might want to take crampons, you might want to take an ice axe in those situations. In May, you're definitely going to see some snow, right? And it's also going to be colder when you're camping. So I think in July, during the heat wave, at 10,000 feet, it was actually very comfortable to camp at night for me. But had I come earlier, it might have been a little bit colder. Instead of taking a puffy sweater, I might have needed to have a parka or something like that. So, the colder it is, the more gear you have to carry, and that's going to make your pack heavier. It's also going to make the Whitney Trail more tricky. So my reading of the California 14ers, I would put the Whitney Trail as probably the second most difficult after White Mountain. The only reason White Mountain is easier is because instead of a trail, it has a road. There's a dirt road leading up all the way to it. So the road's a little easier than the trail. But Whitney Trail is pretty nice, and it'll be hard to find an easier 14er. Although, if you're doing the Cottonwood Lakes and you want to bag another 14er, Mount Whitney is on the easier side. Another thing that most people climbing Whitney, whether from the John Muir Trail side or from the Whitney Portal side, they totally ignore Mount Muir, which is right next to Mount Whitney. It's I think it's less than 2 miles from the summit of Whitney. So right before Trail Junction, as you're descending Whitney, you can try to climb Mount Muir, and that's another 14er, another California 14er. It's a class 3 climb. There is an unmaintained trail there. It's not marked, but it should not be a big detour. I think if you knew what you're doing, you could do it in 20 minutes up and then 20 minutes down. So it's not a big detour, especially if you're planning on camping at like trail camp that night, or if you're just going back down to Guitar Lake. I think the other thing is that you can take if you're going from the John Muir Trail side, the reason why I saw those bags is because people leave their big backpacks and then they take a small pack or no pack to the summit, which is about 2 miles away. So for that 4 miles round trip of the summit to back to Trail Junction, they leave their packs there. And that's only for the people that are on the John Muir Trail side. The people that are on the Whitney side, they're not supposed to leave their packs. They're not allowed to leave their packs. So, for instance, if you're if you're a day hiker, you're not allowed to leave your pack at Trail Junction. And if you're if you're one of the 60 overnighters who won the lottery, then you're not allowed to leave your pack at Trail Junction. But you'll leave your stuff at trail camp probably, or outpost camp if that's where you camp. And that would be much easier than carrying the pack up the 99 switchbacks. Right, so I hope this is helpful for you, that it's not impossible to climb Whitney Trail if you've procrastinated, if you've not been thinking years in advance. You may not have to wait years and years. Most likely not if you're in June and July. These permits are out there, and it's possible to do a slightly longer section hike and climb Mount Whitney. Now, one obvious way that you might be able to get around this is to find a kind of a Mount Whitney guiding service. But the thing is that the guiding services have the same problems getting the permits that everybody else does. And so they also are typically going to want to do more technical things. So they'll probably want to do like the Mountaineers route, where the permits are relatively easy to get, but the route is relatively dangerous and difficult. So if you want to do the trail, but you end up having to do the Mountaineers route, that's a very different experience. That may not be the experience you want. You may also find that guide services go at their pace, not your pace, and you may like to have more independence. And so paying $31 at Recreation.gov for one of these section hiking permits gives you the freedom to choose where you camp, your pace, etc. And you also get to use the safer and better route of Whitney Trail relative to a mountain guiding service that may charge you like $1,000 for a 2-day hike up and down Mount Whitney via the Mountaineers route. I think also, one of these last minute permits has one of the benefits is that you have a little bit more idea what the weather is. So if you get it at kind of the last minute, weather forecasts 7 days, 14 days are better than the almanac. And so that you can get an idea what kind of weather you're going to have. Is it going to be really rainy? Is there going to be thunderstorms? In that case, you probably don't want to get a permit. But if you do the lottery, there's no way to know. You just have to take your lumps for whatever day you get. So you may win the lottery one year, but there's thunderstorms that prevent you from summiting Whitney because it's way too dangerous, or there's a late season snowstorm, right, that makes it too dangerous to summit. And so even though you won the lottery doesn't mean that you're going to summit, versus if you got a last minute permit through JMT Kearsarge Pass or the Cottonwood Lakes or Cottonwood Pass, then you might be able to at least look at a forecast for the next 4 days, 5 days, and have an idea if you're going to have good weather for that section hike. But the good thing is typically weather is pretty good, especially if you're going to summit early in the day, that you probably avoid afternoon thunderstorms. Whitney is kind of in a desert location, so typical days are going to be clear, but as with pretty much every mountain that you may hike, it's almost always better to summit early in the day than late in the day. So getting a pre-dawn start from trail camp or Guitar Lake is probably a lot better than waking up at 9 a.m. and not summiting until after 2. If for no other reason that headlamps are better illuminating uphill trails than downhill trails. Okay, so here's a couple things that you should keep in mind. That these permits, you need to enter the trailhead that you selected on the day that you selected it. So if you get a permit for June 10th at Cottonwood Lakes, you need to start hiking on June 10th. So even if your permit that you said it's gonna take you 10 days or 20 days or whatever, you still have to start hiking on the day of your permit for it to be valid. The other thing is that you can never exit the wilderness, and exiting the wilderness is always when you're enter a parking lot. So if you decide that you're going to go to Whitney Portal and go to their store at Whitney Portal, which is in their parking lot, you've exited the wilderness, your permit is no good, so you can't go back to the wilderness after that. So I think that the wilderness ends, for instance, at Whitney Portal, about where the John Muir sign is, which is about a mile before the parking lot. So you can't do a round trip hike if you go back into any parking lot at any trailhead, right? And so, the other implication is, say that you camp a day, you go to Cottonwood Lakes, camp a day, and then you go back because you forgot something. The rangers, if they know about it, would say that if you go back to your car at Cottonwood Lakes, then you've exited and your permit is no longer valid. I think most people are going to do this as a one-way trip and probably not return back to their trailhead that they started in, and they'll probably be in a multi-person party, and the easiest thing is just stash a car in each location, because the the few specialty taxi services are very expensive to get to these trailheads, and the trailheads are very hard to drive to. So it's expensive all around. I think the other thing is there's maybe some misinformation out there that if you just want to hike Whitney, you just can do it and permit. You don't need a permit, and that's not true. I think that of all the hikes out there, wilderness hikes that are enforced, probably the Whitney one is probably enforced the most. So you're most likely to be caught in the Whitney zone versus if you were starting to hike Cottonwood Lakes. You're probably less likely to get your permit checked. But you're very likely to get your permit checked if you go enter the Whitney zone from Whitney Portal, whether you're day hiking or overnight hiking. So going without a permit is likely to result in disappointment and may result in other penalties. Other thing is if you have these section hikes of JMT, Kearsarge Pass, Cottonwood Lakes, or even the High Sierra Trail, you cannot do the reverse, right? So there's no way to do it on Recreation.gov to do the reverse, but if you attempt to do the reverse, do Whitney Portal to these places, that's going to be the same as, going without a permit, right? So these permits are only allowed to start at the place that you start. Now, the intermediate stops, I think there's some flexibility in that. That if you get your intermediate stops wrong, say you have a 5-day permit and you say that you're going to camp at one location, but you end up camping at another location on day 2, I don't think that's a big deal. But what is a big deal is that you have to start at the trailhead that you said you were going to start at. Subscribe to Slow Boat Sailing. We give you the secrets to bag the 14ers.